get your creative processes running. Think of what might be a good way of representing this pet that I'm going to photograph today. I was fortunate enough with this customer. She's a pole dancer. So she has a studio at home, and she had the studio at home, and we were able to actually access the studio cat in there, and then we do his thing. Okay, so the personality will then determine the scene. If it's a very lazy, laid-back kind of dog or cat, you'll probably want to go and take the photos inside your customer's home, where around their bed or on the couches or wherever they feel comfortable. The context will be determined by the personality of that pet, and that's also something you need to find out beforehand. And then your high intensity activities will obviously be good for a dog that's very active and just won't settle down and it's just all over the place. Just keep in mind that if you photograph a customer's pet, it's fine if they pant and their tongue's out of their mouths. It can actually make for some awesome photography. But if you photograph breed-specific photography for magazines, for instance, I'll get to that section as well. There's certain things that they want. It's not always the most exciting photographs, but that's basically, there's certain requirements that they need. For instance, the mouse needs to close. Okay, so that's basically just why I mentioned that you need to know that if you want to go out to a park and let the dog run and let him jump into water, if that's what you're aiming for that day, perfect, then that's perfect. But if you're photographing a breed-specific photo for a specific magazine, it's a no-go. Think about the context. Okay, now this sort of ties up with the previous section where choose a location where the animal is at ease. Usually for a dog, they're happy wherever you are, but you do get skittish cats and dogs that the best of their personality will come out when they are at ease in their environment, and that can be anywhere. So you need to first also then just talk to your customers, find out where would be best suited for this pet. Now, the very important thing is to consider the background. If you photograph a dog or a cat at your customer's home, obviously it might not be suited, the background might not be suited for the actual photograph, because this is not set up a nice backdrop and we do studio photography. This is now, I'm photographing my customer's pet at home, or you're photographing your own pet at home in that setting. Always keep in mind to rather, if it's a busy home where everything's lying around and it's just cluttered, rather take the pet outside, where you can have a plain background. Even if it's inside the yard and there's a wall that's got a shrub in front of the wall, for instance, that's awesome. If you have enough distance between the wall or the shrub and the pet that you're photographing, you're going to have a perfect blurred background. And there's certain things you need to keep in mind with that as well. I'll get to that. All right. So that's the main thing. Declutter. Look at the background. But also create context in the sense of, if you photograph a cat in a tree, obviously it will be better to get a little bit more of the tree inside the photo than just the cat. So it gives it context. Alright, so just keep in mind what you actually want to achieve with the photo that you are taking at that specific moment. Right, then the blurring background, your low f-stop. Okay, when your aperture is wide open, what's the number of the f-stop? Small. Okay, so wide open, small number. If your lens allows a small f-stop number, meaning 1.4, 1.8 or 2.8, then it means that you have a wide aperture, a blurred background, the depth of field. But it's in pet photography, it is not recommended that you go wide open. Why? Remember that if you are wide open, very easy you've got a very small section of focus within your frame. So you might then get the pet's nose, which is closest to you, or the ears or something else in focus instead of, for instance, the eyes. Okay. The eyes is the most important thing to get in focus when you look at pet photography. The only time that you'll actually go to a very wide aperture is when you photograph a dog that's, for instance, running, and you can get it from a distance. You can get a very, very nice blurry background with an f5. Some people think that you need to go to a 1.4 to a 1.8 to get the blurry background. It's not true. This specific photograph was taken at a park called Walkhaven. I don't know if any of you have been there. We done this for a calendar, Dog Days calendar, which we then sold. The proceeds were then given to animal welfare. If you love animals, use it in a positive way for animal welfare and things like that as well. It's really fulfilling, and you do some good as well. Right. So this was just one of those very hot days, and you decided to get in and out to go shoot it. We all know that photography is about light. Okay, without light, you can't take a photo. Right. So with pet photography, it's especially difficult. Because what happens is you're either outside somewhere in a park and there's no shade at all, or you're inside the customer's house and there's no light. Okay, so it's really a struggle. You have to understand the way that your camera's manual functions work, so that you can determine according to your situation, do you need to up the ISO, do you need to lower your f-stop, do you need to work on your exposure. What do I need to do? Do I need to bring in some light? Do I need to bring in some flash? What do I need to do to add some light to my situation? So let the light firstly fall on the pet's face. We call it catch light in the eyes. That's always a good thing. If you're inside your customer's house, try and get them close to a window where there's enough natural light coming in. So try and find a space in the house where there's the most light available. Obviously, if you're photographing a skittish cat, you sort of have to now work around it and see what they do. If they now decide to go into the darkest room in the house, you have to work with it. You're then going to have to give up a bit of a quality. Maybe you need to up your ISO a bit to compensate for the little light that you have. I've got this saying that rather get the shot, and maybe it's a bit grainy, but you get the shot because for that specific client, it might be still awesome. Alright, so if it's a customer and they just want some memories and shots of their pets, it's fine, get the shot. Okay, but if you can, get into a space where there's enough light. Flash is not recommended. Why not? Red eye and getting frightened, especially cats. Dogs is not as much of a problem with flash, with the red eye. Have you seen cats, their eyes when you photograph them with flash? It's that crazy green monster eyes. So if you photograph cats, rather, if you're inside, bounce your flashlight against the ceiling or wall, or get a reflector so that you can bounce the light so that it's not as harsh in front of you. And please never ever use the on-camera flash, the built-in one, because you can't do anything, it's just straight to the front. Okay, you don't have any choice of where you want to bounce it. It's going to just go straight into the animal's eyes, and some animals get frightened by it as well, so they'll just take it. Okay, so try and avoid flash unless you literally cannot get away with a shot otherwise. Now, have any of you heard of the whole black dog phenomenon? Okay, if you have a black dog, I own a black pug. If you try and photograph her without, doing certain things, it's just going to be this black blob sort of thing. All right. You have to do certain things when it comes to photographing either purely black dogs or purely white dogs. Okay. And the one rule that applies to the black is then exactly the opposite that applies to the white dogs. Right. Some people think that because it's black, now I have to take this dog out into the garden in full sunlight, and then it's going to be lit up and I can see everything and all the detail. It's an absolute no-no. The rule that's basically there for any photography that they say avoid midday sun, it's doubly true for black dogs. Okay, try and find a shaded area, a nice, evenly lit shaded area, and then rather photograph your pets in that area. You can then, if you want to, bring in some diffused flash, just to fill in the details on the pet's body. You can then do that, but never in full sunlight. Okay, what happens to your camera's meter when it looks at a picture? You have to tell it what it needs to do with the scene that you see. Right, so what needs to happen is, if you focus on a dog, let's say this is my dog standing here, I'm focusing on my dog. Within that frame, my camera sees a certain amount of light colors and a certain amount of dark colors, and what does it do? It gets an average of 18% gray. Right. And that's what's going to happen. And then it gets more complicated when you photograph a black dog from far away, where there's more white in the area and then just this little black dog in the corner. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to learn how to work with your exposure compensation of your own camera. With black dogs, your camera will think, oh, there's a lot of black in this photo, so I need to overexpose. So you're going to underexpose. With a white dog, it's going to think, oh, there's too much white in this photo, so it's going to underexpose, so you overexpose, so you need to underexpose to avoid the overexposure. Take a test shot, see what it looks like, and then take your exposure up or down according to what the situation then will require. Just then to reiterate, supplement your available light with your film or bounce flash when you're shooting indoors. Use your exposure compensation, and then diffuse shade will then eliminate distracting shadows. So that's why you then put your pets, your black pets, rather in the shaded area. Pets in motion. This didn't happen in one shot. Okay. Usually with pets in motion, you have to take quite a couple of shots to get the perfect shot. Luckily, this dog was just up for it, so he'll just jump if you throw a ball. Right, so what happens is you need, firstly, a very fast shutter speed. Okay, now who can tell me what happens when you select a fast shutter speed on your camera? What do you lose? Light. You lose light. Okay. So when you want to photograph a pet in motion, like a dog jumping in the water or just running or whatever the case might be, then you would select a time of the day when you have enough available light. Okay. So this is the only exception where I say you can maybe go in midday sun. Okay, because you're going to probably select a fast shutter speed and lose light. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then the shutter speed should then be higher than 1/500th of a second. Use that as your sort of benchmark or your starting point, and then you take it up and see how far you can push the availability of the light according to that. All right, and then if you see that, okay, I can just up my ISO a little bit and then still get quite a fast speed, then that's fine. And also a fast lens. Fast lens, big aperture, small f-stop. The exception here is, earlier I said be careful when you take open your aperture wide open for the focus points. But what's going to happen here is you're going to be far back. Going to be photographing this pet from a distance, so the focus should be fine, and it'll allow you then to get the right shot, because it's going to also help with the speed of the actual shots. Right, and then also another thing to keep in mind is continuous shooting. Put your camera on continuous mode, so that you can just click away, and hopefully one of those 10 or 20 shots is then the perfect one that you go low. Get low, get down on your stomach, sit on the grass. Even if they go over you and lick you and whatever, it's fine. You're going to get a great shot. So you have to be prepared to go low and engage with the actual dog or cat or whatever you're photographing. So get on their eye level. Right, this one is a little bit lower than eye level. I was literally on the ground, on my stomach. And what helps with this as well is if you can't get as low so that you can see properly what you're actually photographing, if your camera's got a live view capability, put the live view on, it's on the floor, so it's going to be quite stable, and then once you see the shots ready, then you just take the shot. Okay, so then you don't need to have your face on the ground, your camera's on the ground, and you just look at the live view your camera. As I've mentioned earlier, focus on the eyes. If the eyes are not in focus, I can almost guarantee you a photo won't get published anyway. Because when it comes to pet photography, they want the eyes in focus, unless it's for some specific creative reason that you're not photographing, having the eyes in focus. Okay, have lots of patience. Don't go to a session with your customers and think you're going to get there and within the first 15 minutes get the shots you want. You need to have patience. A pet photography session with a customer can take up to 2 hours. The only problem with this is that pets get irritated quite easily and they get bored. So it's a bit of a challenge, but don't haste yourself. Don't try and just get it over and done with. Go into it, relax, and in between when you see the pets losing interest, do something else, maybe drink a cup of coffee or cool drink or whatever, and then get back to it, so that you can keep them engaged within this session. Again, as I've mentioned in the beginning, the pet's character is important. If you are photographing, for instance, a dog like this, I think this is the only 2 seconds that he actually laid still. Right, this was quite a mission to get this dog to just stay put. Right, this is actually a dog. The owner will take this dog on a 10-kilometer run on his bike. And the dog's running next to the bike. Then they get back, and then he's still safe. Okay, so sometimes you need to just accept that that's the dog's character. He's not going to settle down. Work with it. Okay, try and get other ways of engaging the pet and getting to just settle down for at least a few seconds so you can take a picture. And also the actual angle. A dog like this, they got such funny, cute faces. So you can photograph him from the top or from the bottom, and it'll make a cool photo. If you're trying to, for instance, show or depict that a dog is really small, then you'll use a different angle to, for instance, photographing a big St. Bernard or Great Dane. Then you'd rather go from downwards up to sort of get this impression that it's big and it's tall and all that. So keep the angle in mind in the sense of what you want to portray for this pet. Then be ready. If you want to get a nice photo of your customer's pets or your own pets, if you don't have your camera on hand, you're going to miss it. Have your camera ready at all times so that if they decide to if the dog and the cat decides to go and curl up together somewhere in a corner or in the bed or on the couch, then you have your camera ready and you can just fire away. But you are going to, because they usually do cute things, when you don't have the camera ready. Okay, getting their attention. The main thing is when you try and get a dog's attention, get an assistant. Okay, and who's the best assistant for that pet? The best assistant for that pet, because he knows the pet, he knows how they can scratch their tummies or do something that will actually evoke something else. All right. So they will also listen more carefully to their voices. I had to photograph a cattery once. So I got there and it's millions of cats and they're all over the place, and I had to now photograph these cats. And what was so cool is the owner, because she knows cats so well, she can mimic the mating sounds and everything of the cats. So she did that, and it got the cat's attention every single time that I needed to get a specific shot. Okay, so don't be afraid, because the customer might be paying you for the session, to ask for help. It's fine. Engage them in the session. Ask them to help you get the pet to do what you need it to do. And then noises. You can have tickers or little
squeaky toys, anything you can hold in your hand while also having the camera in hand. Maybe put a little band on it and just have it in your hand, or ask your customer to just do the squeaking whenever needed to get the attention, and then obviously treats. Right. All pets respond well to treats. So that'll also get their attention. The only problem is sometimes they focus so much on these treats, you don't get a natural look at it. Now, I won't even try to pronounce this dog's name. It's a Mexican heeler's dog. I had so much fun with this session. It's quite a placid, obedient breed. Now, this the reason why I've added this slide is just to give you an idea of when you photograph a specific breed. And you would like it to be published in a magazine. There's certain things you need to keep in mind. Focus on the full body of the animal. Okay. Because if somebody wants to know what a breed looks like, I don't want just the head. I want to see what his body looks like. Does he have a tail? Is it a long tail? Is it a short tail? Does he have unique markings on his legs or on his body somewhere that makes that specific breed unique to that breed? Right. Put your subject in the center of the image. So if you want to get a full body image, make that the center point of the image and put the subject in the center of the image. If you want to get it published, they won't accept it otherwise. They want the full length, and also from the side, not from the front. From the front you can't see the body. Then, as I've mentioned earlier, mouth closed. Okay. It's fun to have a photo with tongue sticking out. That's awesome, right? And you might also, there's also a place for those type of images. But if you're taking a breed-specific photo, try and have the mouth closed, so at least the tongue in the mouth. Right. Focus on the eyes and then ears up. Not pulled back. When they sort of try and, if they're a bit scared or if they skittish or whatever, they pull their ears back. If they've got ears like this that can stand up, try and get them up. Now, I'm just going to touch on some of the typical camera settings that you can think of. Obviously, the environment that you work in will determine the settings. Right, but this is just to give you a guideline. Use this as a benchmark and then you can work from it. Exposure mode. Aperture priority. Okay, you all know what aperture priority is. Okay, on your camera, if you've got a DSLR, you can either put it in auto mode, which is a no-no, okay, or you can put it on full manual, which allows you to set the speed as well as your aperture, okay, or narrow, or work with aperture priority. What is awesome about that is you don't need to worry about the speed. Okay, the camera will, you set your aperture according to your light available, and also keep in mind your ISO. If you don't have a lot of light, then up your ISO a little bit, or bring in additional light. Right? But then aperture is the only thing you need to worry about, and that's basically got to do with what you want to have in focus and how much you want to have in focus. So that's the only thing that you need to sort of worry about if you've got it on aperture priority. That's sort of the safe thing. If you know your manual functions well, perfect. That's even better. Static, your aperture for static shots at a close range, a 5.6 will be perfect. That'll give you the blurry background. As I said earlier, do not think that you have to go to a 1.4, 1.8 if you have a lens that will allow that. Right. You can go higher to a 4 or 5.6. It'll be sufficient. Just make sure you have enough light. Action shots, wide aperture. Okay, why? Speed. Okay, because you need speed. So that's the only time that you'll actually go to a very wide aperture in pet photography will be for action shots. And then static pet is only fast enough to handheld without risking camera shake. So if you're just taking a photograph of a dog that's sitting here, or you're setting up a studio and it's the light conditions don't vary too much and it's the same the whole time and all of that, then just take the fastest speed you can handle with handheld. For action shots, faster required to freeze the moment as I mentioned. Metering. is again just about the fur and what it absorbs the light and how do you actually read it. Dark fur absorbs light a lot more than white fur. Right. And that's why I've mentioned earlier the whole exposure compensation where you need to work with your exposure, because you need to now counter what your camera's meter sees in the frame. Okay, because it's seeing this whole lot of white or whole lot of black, and you now need to compensate for what the camera's meter sees within the frame. So we will then try to turn the black fur to the 18% grey as I've mentioned, and then reverse this. The reverse is then true for white bits. Okay, so I've mentioned that earlier with the exposure compensation. Use your camera's histogram. You know, when you take the picture and it shows you that graph, use that as your guide, because you can quickly have a look and see whether it's overexposed or underexposed, and then you can just play around with your settings according to that. Sometimes when you photograph things, you just don't have time to do it. So you sort of look quickly, take the shots, and you hope you get the right shot. But if you do have time to put your own pets, especially, practice on them. Getting this good. And then the last thing is shooting raw. I'm not a fan of shooting in RAW. I usually shoot in JPEG, but that's just my preference. But when it comes to pet photography, you usually don't have the best light. Right? As I mentioned earlier, you either have too much or you have too little. If you shoot in RAW, you can afterwards. You have a better chance of actually just correcting the image, adding some light or correcting the exposure afterwards, which you won't be able to do as much when you shoot in JPEG. Okay? Just keep in mind, if you shoot a pet in motion, would you then still use RAW? Okay, rather use JPEG. Okay, why? Because it takes longer for the camera to process a RAW file than a JPEG file, and you want speed. Okay, so when it comes to speed and motion, the pets in motion, rather use JPEG then. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, continuous AF shots for your shots in action, and then your continuous AF mode will then ensure that all of your images are then in focus, because it will continuously just focus as you follow your pet around. Now, the next thing is your lens options. A lot of photographers, especially new photographers, you read up and you go online and you just go and see what's in another photographer's bag, and you think, oh wow, she's photographing with this and this lens, it's going to be awesome for me as well. I have to, there's no way that I won't be able to take awesome shots if I get this lens. Okay, untrue. If you do not know how to use a lens, it can be the best lens under the sun, and you will not take a good picture. You need to understand how that particular lens works and find out what your particular style is. What works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. So the first thing is find out what works for you. How do you find out what works for you? Rent lenses. Try lenses out, rent them, so that you can see what works for you, what doesn't work for you, before you actually go and invest in a lens and buy a lens. Spend a lot of money on it, and then it doesn't suit your style. I've just mentioned 3 lenses that I prefer to use. That's your 50mm 1.8, your Nifty 50. Okay, that's your Canon lens. That's very affordable. It might not generate the best image quality. Right? Obviously, it's a cheap lens. There's certain reasons why it won't generate the best quality, but it's a very good low light lightsaber. Okay. If you have a situation where you're at the customer's house, there's not enough light, your Nifty 50 will really help you in cases like this. Okay. Just be careful. Again, as I mentioned earlier, don't necessarily go down to 1.8, right? Or if you get the more expensive 1.4 50mm fixed lens, don't go necessarily down to that, because what happens, you get things out of focus that you didn't want out of focus. Right. Rather bring in some light or up your ISO. Okay. Then also the Canon 70-200, that's a lens that I use quite often, especially for pets in motion. That's the only reason why I use it. You will not photograph a dog or a cat at a customer's home with that lens, because there's not enough space. Right. And if the dogs come close to you, then there's just not enough space between you and the dog. Right. So this is an awesome lens for your action shots to get everything sharp and in focus. It's a fast lens, so it's good option. Right, then some photographers, if you're a seasoned photographer and you see the Canon 24-5, you might think, oh my goodness. Okay, I love my 24-5. It's an awesome all-rounder lens. I can take that one lens to a customer and I can do pretty much everything I need to do with that lens. Right. Obviously, prime lenses are awesome. If you can fork out the money, it's great. Okay. But if it's in your budget to afford, I've got a Canon 5D Mark II, and you want to take the normal standard lens and come with that body, it's perfect. Okay. A lot of my pet photography photos are taken with the 24-5. Post-editing. With post-editing, I mainly use Lightroom and Photoshop. There's just nothing else that works for me. I love it. I do all my culling, my first batch of editing in Lightroom, and then once I've done the Lightroom section, I put it into Photoshop and then I work further with those images. Right. The one main thing that you need to keep in mind that I see so often is overworking the image to try and make up for a bad quality image. The image blurred, and now what you're going to do is try and use your sharpening to sharpen the image correctly. Okay. It's a no-no. Rather get the right shot than trying to fix a bad shot afterwards.